from Bloodvein First Nation.
Louis from Bloodvein First Nation.
We've worked together for decades.
We've worked together for decades.
And I wanted to make sure when we talk about occupation,
And I want to make sure when we talk about occupation,
that we remember that this land is already occupied.
that we remember that this land is already occupied.
Turn it over to Louis.
Over to Louis.
When I was a young boy,
When I was a young boy,
I was a fighter.
I was a fighter.
I was the second best fighter in my community.
I was the second best fighter in my community.
When I got into a fight,
When I got into a fight,
the other guy was always the best.
the other guy was always the best.
I went to Indian residential school.
I went to Indian residential school.
I worked with people who went to Indian residential school.
I went with people who went to Indian residential schools.
We do counseling and therapy,
We do counseling and therapy,
and traditional healing,
traditional healing,
and we hear a lot of sad stories.
and we hear a lot of sad stories.
And it's not only the ones who went to residential school,
And it's not always the ones who went to residential schools,
but now it's their children
but now it's their children
and their grandchildren,
and their grandchildren,
a multi-generational effect.
a multi-generational effect.
A lot of them feel hopeless and powerless
A lot of them feel hopeless and powerless
because the power is outside of their community.
because the power is outside of their community.
At least they are led to believe that it is.
At least they are led to believe that it is.
Not so long ago,
Not so long ago,
when I was younger,
when I was younger,
okay, maybe much younger,
okay, maybe much younger,
I remember Indian agents
I remember Indian agents
who used to come into our reserve.
who used to come into our reserve.
They made all the decisions.
They made all the decisions.
And if people made decisions on their own,
And if people made decisions on their own,
while the Indian agent was not there,
while the Indian agent was not there,
when he came back to the community,
when he came back to the community,
he would overrule their decisions
he would overrule their decisions
and make new ones.
and make new ones.
And now we have people in our own communities
But now we have people in our own communities
who are dependent on chief and council to make decisions for them.
who are dependent on chief and council to make decisions for them.
Or else it's the church.
Or else it's the church.
Churches have a lot of power in our communities.
Churches have a lot of power in our communities.
They told us that our traditional ways were wrong.
They told us that our traditional ways were wrong.
And now there are people, our own people,
Now there are our own people
who preach that same word to their people,
who preach that same word to their people,
continuing what they learned from the others.
continuing what they learned from the others.
We have to turn that around.
We have to turn that around.
When a man and woman get together,
When a man and woman get together,
and the egg and the sperm come together,
and the egg and the sperm come together,
there is an energy that is generated.
there is an energy that's generated.
That energy that generates that life force
That energy that generates that life force
is with all of us now.
is with all of us now.
That same energy
That same energy
is also in the trees,
is also in the trees,
the grass, the animals, the birds,
the grass, the animals, the birds,
the fish, and all life forms.
the fish, and all life forms.
That same energy runs through the earth,
That same energy runs through the earth,
the moon, the stars, the planets.
the moon, the stars, the planets.
That energy
That energy
is what some people call river of life,
is what some people call river of life,
spark of life,
spark of life,
Christos,
Christos,
Christ,
Christ,
Christ within,
Christ within,
is that life force that we are all looking for.
is that life force that we are all looking for.
When we connect with that life force, we feel a sense of power and security,
we feel a sense of power and security,
a sense of belonging,
a sense of belonging,
and we begin to recognize
and we begin to recognize
how we all interconnect in this world,
how we all interconnect in this world,
how we are all interconnected
how we are all interconnected
throughout the whole universe.
throughout the whole universe.
Edgar Mitchell,
Edgar Mitchell,
a former astronaut,
a former astronaut,
was the sixth man to land on the moon.
was the sixth man to land on the moon.
When they were flying back to Earth,
When they were flying back to Earth,
he said he was looking out the window,
he said he was looking out the window,
and all of a sudden, he realized that the universe was alive.
he realized that the universe was alive.
I think that is outstanding
I think that is outstanding
for a scientist.
for a scientist.
I believe, I'm not sure,
I believe, I'm not sure,
but I believe Edgar Mitchell became an environmentalist.
but I believe Edgar Mitchell became an environmentalist.
You can confirm that for yourself,
You can confirm that for yourself.
as I will again.
As I will again.
Look him up on the internet, Edgar Mitchell.
Look him up on the internet, Edgar Mitchell.
That life force,
That life force,
when we connect with it,
when we connect with it,
it humbles us,
it humbles us,
and we know then
and we know then
what the source of all life is.
what the source of all life is.
When we connect with that power,
When we connect with that power,
greed has no room in our lives.
greed has no room in our lives.
We don't even have to confront it.
We don't even have to confront it.
It just falls away.
It just falls away.
I see in many of our communities
I see in many of our communities
an increase of alcohol and drug abuse,
an increase in alcohol and drug abuse,
family violence,
family violence,
a disintegration of political economic values,
a disintegration of political economic values,
social and spiritual values,
social and spiritual values,
and it is because
and it is because
we are disconnected from that life force.
we are disconnected from that life force.
I was given tobacco today,
I was given tobacco today,
as it is the custom of our people
and it is the custom of our people
that when we speak to this life force,
that when we speak to this life force,
we offer tobacco
we offer tobacco
to connect us,
to connect us,
to establish that relation
to establish that relation
with that life force.
with that life force.
I was asked just yesterday
I was asked just yesterday
to come and talk here today.
to come and talk here today.
I had no idea what I was going to say.
I had no idea what I was going to say.
I read about you on Facebook.
I read about you on Facebook.
I listened to some of the YouTube messages,
I listened to some of the YouTube messages,
and I saw this thing happening.
and I saw this thing happening.
I thought it was kind of funny.
I thought it was kind of funny.
Somebody saying a few words,
Somebody saying a few words,
and then other people saying the same.
and then other people saying the same.
But that's a rudimentary microphone,
But that's a rudimentary microphone.
but it works.
But it works.
In this world,
In this world,
there are very few things
there are very few things
that we know for sure.
that we know for sure.
But one of the things that we do know
But one of the things that we do know
is when you have something to do,
is when you have something to do,
the best way to do it
the best way to do it
is to get into it.
is to get into it.
And you learn as you go.
And you learn as you go.
I started off talking about
Talking about
that when I was young,
that when I was young,
I was a fighter.
I was a fighter.
I remember the first time TV came.
I remember the first time TV came.
It was about 1967.
It was about 1967.
And there was this show on CBC,
And there was a show on CBC,
the only channel we had.
the only channel we had.
There was a show called
There was a show called
Last Days of Pompeii.
Last Days of Pompeii.
In that show,
In that show,
There was a guy that was fighting
There was a guy that was fighting
with his sword,
with a sword,
and he fought with everybody and anybody.
and he fought with everybody and anybody.
Finally, they cut off his arm.
Finally, they cut off his arm.
His arm and sword fell to the ground.
His arm and sword fell to the ground.
And then he grabbed that sword with the other arm.
And then he grabbed that sword with the other arm.
And he started fighting.
And he started fighting.
So they cut off that arm.
So he cut off that arm.
Then he started kicking.
Then he started kicking.
Then they cut off that leg.
Then they cut off that leg.
He was laying there on the ground,
He was laying there on the ground.
and somebody came to try and help him.
And somebody came to try and help him.
And he started kicking with the other leg.
And he started kicking with the other leg.
So then he had no legs and arms.
So that he had no legs and arms.
And somebody came to help me, him. I thought I'd see that if you were still listening. Okay, somebody came to help him,
Somebody came to help him.
and he tried to bite them.
And he tried to bite them.
That's what anger does to us.
That's what anger does to us.
We hurt ourselves.
We hurt ourselves.
If we have an objective,
If we have an objective,
we gotta focus on
we gotta focus on
what we want.
what we want.
And what do we want?
What do we want?
We want good health.
We want good health.
We want happiness and joy.
We want happiness and joy.
We want a home to live in.
We want a home to live in.
We want nice clothing,
We want nice clothing,
warm clothing.
warm clothing.
We want all the good things in life.
We want all the good things in life.
So if we want those things,
So if we want those things,
that is what we gotta focus on.
that is what we gotta focus on.
What we don't want
What we don't want
will fall away.
will fall away.
I see in our communities
I see in our communities
people fighting against
people fighting against
alcohol and drug abuse,
alcohol and drug abuse,
family violence,
family violence,
gang prevention,
gang prevention,
and I see in our communities
and I see in our communities
an exacerbation of those problems.
an exacerbation of those problems.
Reminds me of my ex-wife.
Reminds me of my ex-wife.
My ex-wife and I are good friends now.
My ex-wife and I are good friends now.
But I remember one time
But I remember one time
she was driving her vehicle
she was driving her vehicle.
and she had her sister beside her and her brother-in-law behind,
She had her sister beside her and her brother-in-law behind.
and her car was skidding. Her car was skidding
Her car was skidding
on an icy road,
on an icy road,
and she had her wheels turned
and she had her wheels turned.
and she was sliding towards
Sliding towards
a mailbox.
a mailbox.
And her brother-in-law in the back
And her brother-in-law in the back
was telling her to get the foot off the brake, but she would not.
She would not.
So she knocked the mailbox over.
So she knocked the mailbox over.
And I told her later on,
And I told her later on,
you know what would have happened
you know what would have happened
if you let that foot off the brake?
if you let that foot off the brake.
With your tires turned like that,
With your tires turned like that,
your car would have went over there.
your car would have went over there.
That's the way life is.
That's the way life is.
When you have a focus,
When you have a focus,
when you have an objective,
when you have an objective,
you gotta focus on your objective.
you gotta focus on your objective.
Otherwise, you're gonna go in the wrong direction.
Otherwise, you're gonna go in the wrong direction.
And they're gonna have to remove all the mailboxes.
You're gonna have to remove all mailboxes.
What do we want?
What do we want?
That's our focus.
That's our focus.
There are people,
There are people,
governments and corporations
governments and corporations
who have their focus,
who have their focus,
and they seem to be succeeding.
and they seem to be succeeding.
They say that 99%
They say that 99%
are not part of that group.
are not part of that group.
Why do we not have
Why do we not have
what we want?
what we want?
It's because we're focused
It's because we're focused
on the 1%.
on the 1%.
Maybe I'm a little older now.
Maybe I'm a little older now.
I just turned 55 this summer.
I just turned 55 this summer.
Maybe I know I got 1 foot
Maybe I know I got 1 foot
in that hole in the ground.
in that hole in the ground.
And I know that
And I know that
my fighting days are behind me,
my fighting days are behind me
because all that fighting I did
because all that fighting I
did not get me what I wanted.
did not get me what I wanted.
So now I'm learning
So now I'm learning
what those old people meant
what those old people meant
in my Ojibwe language.
in my Ojibwe language.
Mano.
Mano,
The Cree,
the Cree,
they say Kiam.
they say Kiam.
In the Bible,
In the Bible,
it says,
it says,
resist not evil.
resist not evil.
Only
Only,
probably in the last 2 years,
probably in the last 2 years,
I understood the importance of those teachings.
I understood the importance of those teachings.
Because when you focus on what you don't want,
Because when you focus on what you don't want,
that's where your energy is going,
that's where your energy's going,
and that's what grows.
and that's what grows.
So when I heard about this group,
So when I heard about this group,
and I was asked to come and speak,
and I was asked to come and speak,
I thought I would bring this message,
I thought I would bring this message.
that I believe you have good intentions,
That I believe you have good intentions.
I believe you have good goals.
I believe you have good goals.
Let's make sure
Let's make sure
that those goals are positive,
that those goals are positive.
because that's what's going to make sure
That's what's going to make sure
that you achieve those goals.
that you achieve those goals.
I want to thank you
I want to thank you
for inviting me to come and talk.
for inviting me to come and talk.
Miigwech.
Miigwech.
Thank you.
Thank you.